Hey guys, what's going on? It's Spot the Aussie here, your favourite NRL fantasy coach here with the number 8 round analysis coming at you guys. At a couple of things, if you're liking the series thus far, be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're liking this video and found it somewhat useful, be sure to hit that like button. But before I get further into it, I must say round 7 we had a quick little fantasy catch up that I posted on the Spot the Aussie page. I had a few people come out. Here was some footage that occurred from that meetup. As you can see, there were plenty of drinks all around. I want to thank you guys for coming out. I believe Master Hotel Cuba and also Forgetting Benji Marshall wanted a special shout out in this video, so this is the shout out for you guys. I'll be sure to do another event or another catch up in the western suburbs at a pub randomly on a Friday or Saturday, so we can all gather around for our fantasy watch and just watch our phones while we watch the TV and possibly have a drink or two. Just want to thank, it was actually a really great event, but it's also the theme for this week's video, which is NRL Fantasy and social media, because you cannot be an amazing, fantastic, out of this planet fantasy coach unless you have the resources behind you. And where are the most of the resources that you can get? Well, it's social media. But before we talk about social media, let's have a quick spill about my team, the ins and outs, the ups and downs. This is how it looked. Sammy Burgess was my captain's pick. I really thought he was going to play outside of his shell. I had a look at their 17, and on the bench they had one forward, one hooker, one second row, and I believe another utility there, another possible forward. So I didn't think Sammy Burgess was actually going to get pulled off. He got injured, ended up playing 65 minutes. Some of those were during the leg injury period in the second half, and then therefore didn't score as well, and ended up getting a measly 46, which wasn't great. And that's the risk when you play captain roulette, is when you're trying to play points for captains and trying to, meet above from our last week's video, which was not captaining Cameron Smith when you don't have him. So I'm glad that I didn't captain Cameron McInnes, because he seems to be a bit on the downflow. I did trade in Angus Crichton, which was a great trade in. He ended up scoring 58 points, went up in 44k, has great buy coverage. Great. Plays both the mains first two rounds, round 12 and 15, which is what you want. I mean, at the end of the day, you need guys in your team like that are, yes, they are mid-range. But Gritchen ended up playing, I believe, 77 minutes, and as you can see here, 77 minutes. So he might be good to play 80 again this week, and possibly next week and the week after. And you're hoping, come Origin time, he does the same again, so we can able to leapfrog quite a lot of people, because he's actually a pod. Only 5.2% own him. So if you don't own him, own him. I hope you don't own him, but own him. That's my advice right there for you. In other news, I had Joey Leilua come in my team, and I was really excited, and last minute I decided to reverse the trade because I heard that Jamie Buehler ended up hurting his foot for 8 weeks, and Waddell was going to go into the second row from a centre position and take that spot for the next couple of weeks ongoing. Even if he only played 50 to 60 minutes in second row, I was expecting maybe a 30 base, defensive stats, tackles, etc. But he only made 16 tackles and ended up getting injured, and hasn't even been named in the top 21 team, nor has he been named in the second man team. So that goes to tell me that he's most likely out and about. He's not going to be coming back. So that was a real big shame, especially because Joey Leilua went up 29, 30k or whatever it was, and ended up scoring 66. And on news, Tyrone Roberts-Davis got -3. That was terrible. That was really bad. But the other thing, and a big talking point, is Kodi Sironen. Before we talk a little bit more about Kodi Sironen, let's talk about the two main fantasy groups that I'm actually not necessarily involved with myself, but I frequent there more than anywhere else in amongst the fantasy groups out there on Facebook, at least. So there's the NRL Fantasy Lounge, which is run by Adrian Buttery. He does an awesome job. I highly recommend signing up for this page. If you are an active coach and you have a Facebook, I imagine most of you have Facebooks, just join the group. They just hit over 1,000 members. I think they've got 1,001 members. There you go, 1,006 members as of today. And the great thing about this page is that Adrian really, really loves his fantasy, so he actually goes out there and posts a lot about the game updates, when they're playing, any breaking news, and so he'll usually catch anything out. They also have the game threads, which I'll have to scroll down because the game threads are a couple of nights away, and everyone starts to post in there about, what's happening, any updates, what people could think, what people consider, any comments, generic discussion happening while the games are being played. As you can see, the team lists are all posted by Hayden Thompson, which shows you that everyone can comment on them, say, what do they think? For example, Hayden Thompson's just posted no good for the Cows, so Ponga keeps the fullback position. Adrian actually has one of the best fantasy stat sheets I've ever seen. So this is it. It's if you go to his group and there's files, you go NRL Fantasy Stats 2014 and present. I'll just bring it over now on our screen. Here it is. So here it is. Basically, you can look up any player that you want from from 2014 to now and have a look at their stats and how they played and what you can expect from them and what position they were in. So for example, a couple of weeks ago, if you want to look up Benny Hampton, you're like, well, how does he do at the hooker position? You type in Benny Hampton, then you'd go Hampton. You'd get his position down just the hooker. And we've just done that now. When he's only played the one game at hooker, he got 54 points. Now, if you wanted to look at Benny Hampton in the halves, you could do that as well. It's also got the minutes played, the stats breakdown, as you can see. So that round, he got 60 points, which works out to be 71 points per minute because he played 85 minutes that game. As you can see, when he plays 80 minutes, he averages about 35 points more or less when he starts in the halves position. So you can have a look on the interchange. What can we expect when he plays in the interchange? Doesn't play that many minutes, averaging 25 minutes. He gets about 14.37 minutes. So this is a really good tool. Now, one of the talking players that we're always discussing is Elliott Whitehead, who bottomed out because he played center. So if we just look at 2016 stats, because that's all I want to look at now, he averages 52 points. And he plays generally 80 minutes. And that happens when he generally plays 80 minutes. Now, if we were to look 2017, let's have a look when he only played center. Now, when he played center, he only scored 10 points on average. He scored 18 and 2, which basically dragged his price down. So if you have a look back at 2016, which you can do here by pulling up both those stats. Now, he's currently valued at, let's have a quick look. Where is he? I'm going to have to get a classic page. $379,000. Now, if we expect Elliott Whitehead to return to the same form that he was in when he goes to the back row, let's get rid of the halves position as well, we can expect him to be 51 points in average, which works out to be about $484,000 or almost $485,000. So there you go. There's an example where this guy's undervalued by about $100,000, provided he returns back to the form that he was on previously. And you kind of expect that. I mean, he's playing the 80 minutes. Not much has changed from last year to this year. He still has the same halves working around him. He still has, Hodgson at the hooker position. So it's not like you've got like Robbie Farah coming into the team and you're playing second row, therefore he hogs the ball, you're not getting anything. The only thing that really changed is that he just played center at the start of the year, bottomed out in price quite significantly, because if we have a look at his score back on the actual fantasy app, if we just click on him, game log scores 18-2, 50-40 dash because he was suspended for one round, 55 and 54. So we can expect him to go back to that score if he's going to continue that form. So that's one really great tool to kind of analytically look at a player when they change position or change club and you're considering bringing them in, or what can you kind of expect from that player when something different happens. And it's one of those things where I think a lot of other websites and other groups have their own stats page like this, but this one, I think it's done really well. And I highly suggest, if you have your own stats little booklet that you have and you want to advertise it down below, feel free to make a comment down below and give a shout out to your own page, and I'll check it out. Maybe in a later episode I'll talk about the comparisons or what it kind of means, as well as in comparison to this one. The other thing is, I know a lot of people love is the NRL Fantasy break-evens. And I always get questions about, what's the break-even for this player? What's the break-even for that player? If you actually go to the Renegades Fantasy Sports website, they also have their own fantasy group, which you can see right here. And a lot of people are bringing in their own media statuses, like Burgess was recently cleared for the Grade 1 shoulder charge. You've also got people making their trades here as well and asking for suggestions, and you can get a lot of people's opinions, which is going to help you become a better fantasy coach if you can understand someone else's point of view or the way they're going to track. Ultimately, I always advise you to take your own decisions and make your own pathway, because it's the best way to learn. And if you're not the one controlling your team, then it's not really your team, is it? But again, I'd hardly take on a lot of advice from other people and kind of, make their decisions and kind of list out possibly a few different scenarios where they can kind of advise you one way or another. But if you go to their actual webpage, because they actually have an official webpage with its own URL called renegadesfs.com, as you can see, they've got their own writing guides. They're a much bigger admin team. There's a lot more going into it. They've got break-evens for round 8. which again, you can click on and it will show you all the break-evens for all the players organized by the club that player's in. So if you have a question around the break-evens, I'd highly recommend, just checking out their website. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, and there it is. It's an easy resource. But of course, I'd highly suggest that you go and support the Facebook group, because that's where I believe it all originates from, and the Renegades Fantasy is just the official application for the admins to kind of control the content that gets posted on the website. Another great resource, and I believe this is the biggest fantasy group in terms of like a forum, not necessarily on Facebook, but a forum, and I love to be here. This is where I am. If I'm not in the Fantasy Lounge or at the Renegades during a game thread, I'm always here. So the NRL Fantasy Fanatics is actually a page called NRL Fantasy Fanatics. And the reason why I came across this is because one of my first videos as posting as the NRL Fantasy Fanatic, someone posted, well, you've got a very similar name, you should come check out our forum. And it's a very friendly group of people. It's a very mature community. It's very down to earth. It's very classy as well. And they also do, the NRL late mail team list, the ultimate footy. They also don't just do the NRL fantasy. They also do the Dream Team virtual sports. So they've got the variations. This is another resource that you can use. In their fantasy section, they also have a stat spreadsheets, etc. So they've got the break-evens current for round 8. So if you don't want it in a website form, you can come here, you can download it in Excel. They've got a price predictor. They've also got a team planner, and they've got old stats back from 14 as well. So it's good to kind of, use these resources. If you don't necessarily have the NRL Fantasy Coach that you've paid for a buy detector, you can download their team planner, which will allow you to see how many players you've got for each of the rounds. So if you're thinking about alternative ways to kind of save money and you don't necessarily want to buy the Fantasy Coach, I'd highly advise using them. But it's a very friendly community. It's very organized. It's very on the mill. If you can have a look, they've got an NRL Fantasy thread part 32, and then once they get to page 50, they'll go down to NRL part 33, and they'll keep rotating. And you can ask any questions. I highly recommend, signing up, getting your name out there, just introducing yourself, saying, hey guys, this is me. Maybe you have a question or two, but there's a lot of great people here, a lot of knowledgeable people, a lot of good fantasy coaches. In fact, I think the last year's winner is actually on this page as we speak, and the year before that, Daniel Long is on the Renegade Fantasy page. So there's two really, good sources of information if you're looking for those little bit of coaches with a little bit of an extra edge. The other big resource I always use is, of course, the NRL Reddit, the subreddit, the creme de creme of NRL fantasy news. If there's anything posted in the interwebs or known out to man about NRL, it's going to be here. It's always going to be at the NRL Reddit page itself. You can always find anything here. Whether it's fantasy related, maybe not. Like, for example, Sammy Burgess has been found not guilty and is free to play this weekend. That's fantasy relevant. Some of the stuff might not be. West Tigers blocked Mitchell Moses, released the Parramatta Eels. That's fantasy relevant because you're probably thinking, what do I do with Clinton Gutherson? Because if Mitchell Moses comes across, do I have to trade him out? The other big things is everyone usually posts things here. Whether or not it's the original source is another story, because often it's not. It's probably from another area, like Twitter, for example. Wacko's Whispers, 5 hours before the game, had posted on the weekend that Hampton might not be starting in the halves position, and that was like, everyone was like, I don't know about that, but it had been posted from there on Twitter and over here, and you might not have the resources to follow 20 different Twitter accounts. You might not have the resources to follow 20 different NRL fantasy groups on Facebook or on the NRL Fantasy Forum of the NRL Fantasy Fanatics. So if you generally come through here last minute, you'll always find what you're looking for. You'll always find that little blip of information that's naturally going to assist you in making your fantasy decisions, especially the late NRL news. Not the stuff that's necessarily posted an hour before the game where the team lineups have changed, but stuff like someone's getting a suspension, or Jamie Buhrer was injured before, the game and had 8 weeks. I'd found that out because I was browsing through the reddit.com and I was on the NRL subreddit and it had been posted up. The big thing here is this is a great resource for everything. Like, for example, Ponga Jr. facing 8 to 12 weeks with finger injury. Yes, the broncos.com.au was the first website to publish it, but it's always going to come up here. It's just a big resource. Look at the amount of members. 12,268 members. That is a lot of people. Well, 12,216 intentionally missed tackles. It's a bit of a Reddit pun. You can catch me out here quite often. My username is Spot the Aussie. It's no giveaway there because it's the same as my YouTube. But the thing here is it's more of a necessity. Like, how many times have you been caught out because you didn't hear anything and it was too late, 1 or 2 minutes before the game, because you just got to the pub, you pulled up your phone, you had a quick look through it, and unfortunately you were too late. Now, had you have come across that information on the actual Reddit subreddit NRL, then you would have been trump cards. You would have been that one extra step ahead of every other fantasy coach that doesn't necessarily take or put those steps in place. So I'd highly recommend, following the page, being active, trying to get involved. There's a lot of great resources out there, like we've already discussed. The NRL Fantasy groups on Facebook, the NRL Fantasy Fanatics.com, which is the forum group, and of course the subreddit here. If there's any resources that I've missed, be sure to let me know in the comment section below. Maybe you want me to go more thoroughly over a stat sheet or over a buy coverage sheet or over any particular area of a forum that I didn't necessarily do enough justice. I wanted to try to get them all in there and talk about my expression of interest of where I'm at. There's a lot of good people that you can follow on Twitter, like, the Wackos Whispers, the Mole, the guys who sometimes have great information and sometimes don't necessarily have correct information. So you've always got to be, have your nose out there as well and kind of sniffing out there for a little bit of clues and taking things with, actively looking at things with due care, not just taking everything just purely on word, but also other resources. And if they start to marry up, generally there's a red hot sign that something's a brewing. But I do want to get to the questions that I've been asked, and this was one of the questions from the NRL Fantasy Fanatic website, and that I'm actively reading my own thread, which is the NRL Fantasy Fanatic new fantasy video every Wednesday. Question is from Hyman Busters. When do we start trading out Cashcows to Nuffies and bank the dollars? Is the plan to have 6 to 8 red dot Nuffies by the end of the league? The answer there is yeah. Why is he talking about the red dot Nuffies? Red dot Nuffies like Joey Waddell at the moment, who's not playing. Well, that's not good if he's not playing because he's not making me cash, right? Well, not necessarily. Let's look at this from another perspective. A lot of people had reserved CHN last week, and it was the second last game of the week, and then he had actually been removed from the game altogether. And it was a bit of a surprise, and a lot of people caught out, and therefore you always get the lowest scoring non-playing reserve in your team. And for a lot of people it would have been, the Carl Lawtons, the Kane Elgeys, the Ben Hamptons on 18 to 19 points, and that's not good if that's your points. You want to be breaking away from that as much as you possibly can. So by having a red dot there, that essentially means that you're not getting a bad auto emergency score, and you're also getting as much cash as you possibly can. So for example, by the end of the season, I would love to not have Kane Elgey in my team, but someone much cheaper and who wasn't playing, so I don't get the auto emergency. Who was that? That of course is going to be Jai Field. Now Jai Field is the young lad from St George who played for the one game and scored 2 points and is down to 128k. Now if I traded him now, I would get almost $100,000 because he's $225,000 down to $128, which is $97,000. I'd also get a guy who wasn't going to screw me around and get, like, for example, Kane Elgey score of 19 and therefore be my auto emergency. Now, if I had 18 players, you've got 25 people in your team. Imagine if you had 18 players and your 18th man was, I don't know, Curtis Sironen. Curtis Sironen averages about 30 to 40. Your 17th man, CHN, didn't play, therefore the auto emergency was Curtis Sironen. That's not bad. You know what I mean? That's actually a good result. So you want to eliminate these guys by trading them in at the end of the season for guys who haven't played, that are around the rookie price of 138k and aren't going to stuff you around. The big thing is you don't want to do that now. You want to do that much later in the season. You've got buys to play. How many people are going to be caught out in the buy coverage rounds? A lot. So many people, each and every year, I see this every year, I will jump up 3,000 ranks in my first buy round. At round 12, I will jump up 3,000 ranks. I'm currently ranked almost 6,000 now because the backwards week we kind of had, even though it wasn't that bad of a score, 836. If I score 800 points in a buy round, that is considerably amazing. It's considered that good. Here's the thing is, a lot of people I speak to get caught up in this whole notion, well, I don't want to have bad players in my team. I'd rather have 5 guns and make sure that they play the following week and therefore get great scores. And that way I'm not missing out on much. Like, I don't want to get Nuffies in my team. And let me ask you this. What sounds better? 5 or 6 guns who you have during buy coverage, or 7 to 8 guns plus 6 to 5 Nuffies? And by Nuffies, I mean guys who are going to score 20, 30 points. The other thing you have to remember is, during the buy period, all the gun players that play State of Origin will not play. So the Nuffies might actually get more game time and generally score better against a weaker opposition by getting, tackle bust, line breaks that they wouldn't necessarily get during a major game. Like, for example, let's have a look at the round 12 bye. Warriors are playing Brisbane. Brisbane have a lot of players that won't be playing. You've got Joshua McGuire. You'll have, who else we have? You might or might not have Boyd. You'll have Big Semithido, who won't be playing. Gillette will not play either. So the thing is, their front and second row are going to be dramatically affected with weaker players or guys who don't necessarily play in the top team. So that means attacking stats for the opposition are going to be more likely, which is going to be your Warriors team. So, Sean Johnson might have a field day where he ends up scoring 60, 70 because he's making more line breaks or line break assists because of the weaker opposition he has. That's going to be the same story for the Nuffies, the guys who don't necessarily score well. Like, for example, if we have a look, who are we going to be looking at? Who's a player that I've got now? Now, I did bring in Kodi Nikorima. If he's going to be playing, which he should be, he's going to be up against the Warriors, who don't generally have... Well, Ryan Hoffman might play State of Origin. I doubt it. So that's actually a really bad kind of case there. But it's case by case, and at the end of the day, you want your guys to be playing. You want to have 15 players, 16 players. Guys who don't buy coverage properly are going to get screwed in the long run in an overall league. If they're playing head-to-head and they don't count buy rounds, forget it. Don't worry about buy rounds. But overall league, which is me and most of you guys watching, and I highly recommend go watch last week's episode where we talked about this. Players like James Graham, players like Semi Burgess, Pommies, who are playing 2 of the 3 major buy rounds, especially the first 2 major buy rounds. In fact, look at that. James Graham plays round 12, Semi Burgess plays round 12, 15, and also 19. That's great. That's actually really, really, really good. So the thing here is, don't neglect your team when making buy coverage. I mean, I've got 13 players out, but by then, I'm hoping to at least play 14 or 15. I reckon I'm going to be able to draw up about 3K in rounds in my first buy coverage. And a lot of people after the first buy, the first thing they'll say is, well, that was stuffed. So, yep, trading Nuffies is great. Make sure you got the buy coverage first. Do it by after the second round, after the second buy round, which is going to be around 15, 16. If you've got enough players that are playing in the round 18, 19 rounds, do it. If not, wait till about the round 19 mark before you can commit to something like doing that, because you want players playing at this start of the season. You want them to play. You want them to be making you money. You want them to be available. You want them to be active. Having players cold. I've seen coaches carry 5 or 6 guys who haven't even stepped foot on the field yet, and that's their strategy. How can you be making money off guys who aren't playing? You can't do it. Those are the guys that are significantly going to get screwed over. They might be playing strong now because they've got a great auto emergency or they've got a great 18 to 19 players, but let's face it, they're going to get screwed around in the long run. The second part of that question, or really the first part of that question was, what was that part of the question? The part of that question was, when do we start trading Cashcows to Nuffies and make the cash? Well, that's kind of the same question there. But yeah, you are right. 6 to 8 dots. I'd say 6 dots. Because if you had 19 players, 6 dots would mean you'd have 25 deduced down to 19. What happens when you run out of trade? You got 0, and one of your major guns gets injured? you want to make sure you've got 18 and your 19th man, just in case. So to have 8 red dots, not a good situation to be in. But yeah, it's doable. And that's kind of the big thing, is just down caching so you can cash to your guns straight away. The other thing is, how do I consider my guns or my players or my mid-range or my cashies to be peaked? A great example of this, I know this isn't necessarily the question, but it's in the same realm. I'm looking at Ryley Jacks at the moment. Ryley Jacks played 35 minutes last round. Cameron Munster's playing on the bench again. We imagine it's going to be 35 minutes or less. He's peaked at 29 points. He's more likely to go down money, and if he gets to 20 the next round, he'll most likely go down another 5k the next round, and another 10k, and that's bad. So we wanted to trade him ASAP, traded him to Kodi Nikorima, who should be playing the next 5 rounds while Benny Hunt sorts out his injury. He's also going to be playing the first major buy round. He has a break-even of 2. Yeah, a 2, which is good. He got 66 points in his last game, but he also might not get 66 points in the next round. But I was desperate. You know, Benny Hampton wasn't playing hooker. He was playing utility, which again screwed me. So I needed someone in the halves who was going to be playing the full 80 minutes. So I'm going to be taking a punt on Kodi Nikorima. Also brought in Joey Leilua. Even though I didn't get him last time, the reality is I'm not going to get him as cheap as he is now. Break even 15. Imagine if he gets another 60 points, he'll be going up by, 35k easily, if not 40. So there's a lot of things going into my team at the moment. So buy coverage is on the forefront. Banking to cash is in the back of my head. I'm not even thinking about it just yet. Like, I've got a plan. You should always have a plan. But hold off. Hold off for a little bit, have a think about it, make those trades when they come in, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I'm going to say this round. I could go into a bit more depth and analysis. In fact, I didn't actually get that many questions this week, so if you want to start sending in your questions, in fact, what I'm going to do is next week, the only questions I'm going to answer are those that come through on my Snapchat. So my Snapchat is Spot the Aussie. It's spelled exactly the same as my YouTube, my Reddit account, and also my Facebook account, SPOTTHEOZZIA. So you want to ask me a question, be sure to send it via a Snapchat. If you just want to take a photo of your question, or if you want to take a Snapchat of the wall and you want to scream it into the microphone or anything like that, and you don't want to show your face, maybe you want to show your face and show some pride where you've got your own team jersey on, or a shout out to yourself, be sure to send me your Snapchat and it'll be shown on the next episode. So that's about it for this round. I hope you found this useful. I hope you go and find and use those tools to your advantage. The fantasy groups that we spoke about, the Fantasy Fanatic forum, and also the Reddit subreddit. I will say one thing, I'm actually not connected in an administration or moderator ability of any of those pages. I'm not affiliated or associated by any means. It's purely just where I like to hang out. If I did miss anything, or there's any tools you want me to go over more considerably, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll have a bit of a chat about that in more length next week. We'll go from there, guys. Been Spot the Aussie. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to give this video a like, and I'll check you guys out shortly. And good luck, because this week's going to be a big one. Shh.